Well, welcome back. Crane Durham's Nothing But Truth, AFR Talk. So we get a lesson from the professor. That would be Professor Bruce Thornton, as we do on Fridays during the first segment. And then we move to our good friend who made time for us today and tonight, if you will. And that is the guest host of Crane Durham's Nothing But Truth. And he is also the U.S. Bureau Chief of LifeSite News, Ben Johnson. Ben, thanks for making time. How are you, buddy?
Thanks. Good to be with you on a Friday.
Absolutely. Hey, tell me this. It's gone to the jury, right? The Gosnell trial?
That's right. They're deliberating.
All right. And the specific charges are, how many counts of murder is he looking at?
Well, right now there are 3 charges of murder against babies who were born outside the womb that he had performed a quote-unquote abortion on outside the womb. 1 charge of infanticide, and then there's a third-degree murder charge for a 41-year-old immigrant, Colonel Monger, who died in his care. So altogether, 3 first-degree murder charges, infanticide, and one third-degree, so a total of 5 murder charges.
And how has the media coverage been this week?
Well, I'm on with you this week, so that's good. Outside of this particular program, somewhat scant. Yeah, I believe the CBS covered it for 13 seconds last week. NBC, I think, covered it. It did an update this week. MSNBC actually covered it for the first time in prime time last week. Chris Matthews, of all people, in order to say that some of the charges had been dismissed, and that was his update. So. But the good news is tonight, 9 o'clock tonight, Fox News is running a 1-hour special about the Gosnell trial and about Kermit Gosnell in particular. And it's as I understand it, if I'm reading the title correctly, it's also going to talk about the lack of media coverage from anybody outside of the pro-life media, AFR, and Fox News.
Probably a good idea to take one of your pro-choice friends, so-called pro-choice in the parentheses there, and ask them to watch that with you. I think a lot of people should do that. A lot of us in the pro-life community to sit down and say, hey, take a good look at Kermit Gosnell and what happened here, and maybe a good discussion could be had. What do you think? As the longer the jury goes, is that a sign of anything, Ben, in your opinion?
Well, it's hard to know exactly what to make of it. There are actually 2 people on trial. Of course, we've talked about how little coverage there is, but there are actually 2 trials going on concurrently. One of them is Gosnell. One of them is a woman who worked for him named Eileen O'Neill, who is on trial for 8 charges, primarily that she pretended she was a doctor when she never had a medical license and billed as though she were a doctor. And all of the questions yesterday from the jury had to do with Eileen O'Neill. Kermit Gosnell is facing more than 380 charges altogether, and I don't know that any of the questions today have focused on him. I understand one of the questions was about conspiracy, and they're both facing conspiracy charges and corrupt organization charges. So it could be that they haven't even begun to deliberate on Gosnell yet. They're still dealing with Eileen O'Neill. So we're probably looking at a minimum of next week at some point. And as everyone that I know in the business says, you can never second-guess the jury.
So let me ask you this, Ben. Now we have this trial. We have a special coming up. People can read your work, obviously, at lifesitenews.com, and I'll put the latest link up on the Facebook page. But we also have Plan B and President Obama supporting the access for Plan B for 15-year-olds. Now, Plan B is an abortifacient, is it not?
That's right. Plan B, or sometimes called One Step, Plan B One Step, is sometimes also called emergency contraception or the morning after pill. But people take this after the act itself in order to, it sometimes does act to prevent conception. However, if conception has already occurred, it acts as an abortifacient. Just by the way, as the average birth control pill can sometimes act as a very early abortifacient. It thins the uterine line so that the newly conceived child, I should say, cannot implant in the woman's womb and then will be aborted. So this has already been a point of contention during the Obama administration, of course, for a long time. Its producer, Teva Pharmaceuticals, had asked that it be sold over the counter during the Bush administration, I think more than a decade ago. Nothing happened during the Bush administration. When Obama came in, a court case went to a judge, I believe his name was Corman, and Corman said that any woman of any reproductive age had a right to this just as she had a right to an abortion. And so as a civil rights matter or a constitutional rights matter, this should be put OTC for any woman of any reproductive age, presumably all the way down to 11. The Obama administration decided they would sell it over the counter to 17, and just this past week, Teva, they granted a follow-up from Teva Pharmaceuticals to sell it to 15-year-olds. They said that they're going to fight it in court for the rest of this. To me, this is just pure political positioning. They don't really care about this. I mean, this is going to be available over the counter. The way that you're supposed to make sure that only 15-year-olds get it, as though that weren't bad enough, is that the cashier checks it, like they do for beer or cigarette purchases. And as we all know, it's impossible for anyone to get those underage. So this is the exact same level of scrutiny, only it's an abortifacient. This is a child predator's dream, because now they can molest children and have them go in, purchase this off the shelf, and no one will even look askance at what's going on. If you have someone who's 12, 13, 14, 15 getting pregnant, a whole host of people should be involved in that next step. One of them quite possibly being authorities to make sure that there wasn't a case of statutory rape or molestation or incest, and then a host of people who are involved in counseling and making sure that the child, and 15 we are talking about children, receive the kind of counseling that they need to assure that whatever led them to this decision, whether it's low self-esteem or desire to please people or whatever else, they receive the counseling they need not to make this kind of a decision again.
Absolutely.
All of that's going to be taken away by this decision.
And Ben, culturally, what are the consequences of this? Is it the furthering, diminishing respect for life as we know it?
Well, very much so, and chemical abortion is at the forefront of this. Abortifacients, chemical abortion as we call them, morning after pill, RU486, these are so much easier to sell to the public because it's harder to conceive that a child is a child from the moment of conception. For a long time, as you know, when we were younger, they tried to tell us that a child at six months development, 7 months development was just a cluster of cells, and they'd show you a picture of a blob of pink tissue inside a woman to depict a child. Once we got ultrasounds, we knew that was better. But right now, that same level of understanding isn't necessarily there about the moment of conception. It is among bioethicists and scientists, but it isn't among others. So if they can move to a different form of abortion, then opposition to abortion goes further and further down. And frankly, it shouldn't. From the moment of conception, you have a unique human being, its own DNA code, its own blood supply. This is a fully distinct and unique and unrepeatable human being who has a right to life and whose ability to be born and enjoy life shouldn't rest on somebody else's whim.
Ben, I know you are in a time crunch here, so I'm asking this, and I understand if you say no, but if you have 2 more minutes, I would love to play something for you. Otherwise, I'll have to play them for you next week. No problem. Okay,
2 minutes
great.
is fine.
Great. Here it is. I want to go to clip 20. This is cut 20. This is an abortion activist in North Dakota having a discussion about the new abortion laws with Rachel Maddow earlier this week. Here is part of that discussion. Roll it.
Women come in and the first week, the day the governor signed the bills, they were calling and saying, is my appointment next week? Can I still have it? Can I still be there? Or they're coming in and they're saying, well, this is illegal. And, our clinic is located right on a very busy street, right in downtown Fargo. And it's shocking to me that they think that we're operating right there with a sign on the front of our building and protesters and escorts, but they think it's illegal.
They think they're on like the Underground Railroad.
Okay, that's part 1. Here's part 2. It's cut 21. You got the Underground Railroad, though, right, Ben? You got that?
I sure did.
Okay, roll it.
When a woman doesn't want to be pregnant, she will go through hell, high water in North Dakota, blizzards, floods. She'll hit a deer on the way and have a flat tire and say, can I still come? When a woman doesn't want to be pregnant, she'll do whatever she needs to do. And unfortunately, it just adds to the stigma that women feel when they hear all of these things about heartbeat bans, sex selection, genetic abnormality. Abortion is very common, and the stigma is disgusting.
Ben Johnson, U.S. Bureau Chief of LifeSite News, the floor is yours.
Kermit Gosnell operated for decades with a shingle out that said precisely what he did, and the entire time he was operating in violation of the law. There was just a sting operation from Live Action this past week. 3 videos have been released so far, and they all show that doctors have said that if a child is born alive, they will not take the medical procedures necessary to save that child's life, even though that's what the law requires. So we see a complete and utter sense of lawlessness when it comes to the abortion industry. They're not regulated. They are not inspected. Generally, people are willing to look the other way, especially when those states are administered by pro-choice people, as Pennsylvania was for decades. And they're willing to turn a blind eye to what's going on. So this idea that they're operating out in plain sight and everything is above board is complete nonsense. If that were the case, Planned Parenthood would be the first people on board trying to tighten regulations and tighten restrictions and tighten oversight from the state to ensure that they have a quality product. They don't, because they are taking our tax dollars, half a trillion dollars every, or half a billion, I should say, every year to Planned Parenthood, and they're performing illegal actions. And the sooner that this is exposed, the sooner we can end this unnecessary subsidy to the industry of death.
U.S. Bureau Chief, LifeSite News. He's on the front lines, and he's delivering the truth. An outstanding writer and journalist and commentator. Ben Johnson, thank you for making time for us tonight. It is a pleasure.
Thank you so much. God bless.
God bless. And, yeah, did you hear his passion? We are really blessed to have him in the pro-life movement. Not only an outstanding writer, but he gets right to the heart of it. And I must tell you, pun intended? Well, yeah, in a way. So I want you to think about that. But there are multiple things going on with the debate and discussion. I don't understand how, if anybody knows the history of Planned Parenthood, one could defend it. If anybody actually goes through and gives an honest look at the numbers, they can say that tax dollars aren't going to fund abortion. And I just want to give a shout out to every one of you on the front lines of the pro-life movement. Continue to tell the truth, be salt and light, and speak truth in love. Loving is not lying. And for those running crisis pregnancy centers like my outstanding mother-in-law, you're doing outstanding work, and your message is getting through. You're saving lives. Thank you for what you do. Crane Durham's Nothing But Truth. Benghazi update on the flip side. AFR Talk.